I remember the night the stars disappeared. It wasn't just a battle, it was the end of something sacred. Winterfell didn't fall in a day, it fell in a moment, when the living realized they weren't fighting to win, they were fighting not to scream. It was cold, but not just cold. It was the kind of cold that makes your bones forget how to be bones. Jon Snow stood at the front, his sword shaking in his hand, not from fear, but from the weight of everything riding on him. Arya was already gone, disappeared into the shadows like she always did. No one knew what she planned, not even Bran. Theon had just died protecting him. And Bran was still, too still. Then we saw him, the Night King, not running, not charging, just walking through the chaos like it was all his. And it was. Dany screamed overhead on Rhaegal, burning the field in bursts of fire, but the flames meant nothing. They danced and vanished on the bodies he raised. And then the unthinkable happened. Rhaegal fell. Whites climbed onto his back mid-air, biting, slashing, pulling. His roars filled the skies until he plummeted. Daenerys fell too, but Drogon caught her, barely. He fled with her across the ice, wounded and howling. Jon saw his chance. He ran straight for the Night King, dodging the dead, slicing through the ones he could, screaming Bran's name. But then the Night King turned. He raised his hands. And everyone who had just died, everyone we loved, stood again. Podrick, Ser Jorah, even Lyanna Mormont, her small frame now blue-eyed and broken. Jon stopped. He dropped to his knees in the snow, his sword slipping from his grip. He knew he wasn't going to make it in time. Bran's eyes rolled back, connected to the weirwood, but his body, it was left sitting there. The Night King walked into the Godswood. No one stopped him. Arya tried. She leapt from the shadows with everything she had, the same move that worked before, but this time he caught her mid-air, crushed her windpipe, dropped her, and walked on. He didn't kill Bran, he didn't need to, he touched him, and with that touch he became something more. He didn't just kill the three-eyed raven, he consumed it, and Winterfell went silent. Hours later, the storm cleared, and the Night King stood at the walls of Winterfell looking south. With him were the dead, but not just dead bodies, dead heroes, Ser Jorah, Arya, Theon, even Brienne, who had fought until her blade cracked. They marched beside him now, silent, cold, and perfect. Far away in Dragonstone, Tyrion felt a chill in his bones. He knew. He didn't need a raven to know Winterfell was gone, but he didn't know how fast the storm was moving, or how soon it would reach them all. They said the dead would march slow. They were wrong. By the time word reached Dragonstone, it was already too late for the Riverlands. Villages were empty, food still on tables, fires still burning, but not a single living soul. Just frost on windows and silence in the air. And then came the screams. Far away at first, like whispers carried on wind, then closer, then everywhere. Crows flew south, not to warn, but to flee. In King's Landing, Cersei Lannister stood on her balcony sipping wine, smiling. Qyburn whispered reports in her ear. "Winterfell is lost," he said, eyes wide. She smirked. Good, let them kill each other. But she didn't understand. Not yet. The Golden Company lined the gates. The Iron Fleet waited in Blackwater Bay. Ballistas faced the skies, ready for dragons, but no dragon came, only snow. At first, it fell, lightly, like ash. Then thicker. By morning, the streets were white. By afternoon, the first scream was heard outside the city walls. By evening, the White Walkers were at the gate. Jaime stood by the Queen's side, unsure if he was her knight or her prisoner. I told you, he muttered. This war was never about thrones. Cersei slapped him, but she was shaking. For once, her eyes showed fear. Drogon did return. For a moment, there was hope. He crashed into the Whites at the gates of King's Landing, burning entire columns of the dead. Daenerys stood on his back, hair whipping in the wind, her voice roaring as she screamed, "Dracarys!" It worked, for a moment, until the Night King raised his hand, and with that one motion, the flames died. Drogon screamed and tried to fly, but spears of ice came from the clouds, 1, 2, 3. One struck through his chest, another through Daenerys. They both fell, and then he raised them. Drogon, Daenerys, now part of his army, inside. The Red Keep. Cersei watched as the undead queen marched toward the throne she'd once begged for. Qyburn fled. Jaime stayed. They hid beneath the castle, in the old crypts, believing stone would save them. But the dead were already there. The ancestors they honored rose first. Cersei died not with a scream, but a whisper. I won. King's Landing froze from the inside out. The Iron Throne stood frozen in ice, untouched, unclaimed, unimportant, because the Night King didn't want to rule. He wanted silence. Far to the south, in dawn, the people watched as snow reached the desert. Children cried, having never seen it. Old men cursed the gods, and Princess Alyasand knew. This wasn't a winter they could wait out. This was extinction. In Old Town, Samwell Tarly buried books in the catacombs, hoping someone might find them someday. He didn't run. Not yet. Because there was still a whisper. A single fragile hope, a legend older than the Night King, a fire that burned where even snow dared not fall. The dead ruled Westeros. From the icy gates of the wall to the red dunes of dawn, silence replaced song. Cities once full of laughter, now echoed with the soft shuffle of cold feet and the quiet groan of wooden beams beneath frozen roofs. The Night King did not speak. He did not sit. He did not sleep. He walked. Sometimes he stopped and looked at the sky like he remembered stars that no longer shined. And then he moved on. The few survivors left had scattered. Some sailed, hoping the seas hadn't frozen. Others climbed mountains, hiding in caves and cliffs above the snow line. But most didn't make it. The cold was too fast, the silence too heavy. The last whispers of resistance gathered in Old Town, inside the bones of the citadel. Samwell Tarly stood at the edge of a stone balcony, wrapped in layers, his breath a thin mist. Behind him, Gilly and Little Sam slept in a corner. Books surrounded them, open, scattered, torn. Not just history, not just stories, but prophecies. One page, one name, one last chance. The Shivering Doom. A tale older than Valyria. a shadow that once covered the world until something, no one remembered what, pushed it back. The notes didn't speak of swords or dragons. They spoke of flame from beyond the veil. Not fire, not heat, but a soul. A light that could not be touched, carried by someone who walked alone, unseen. Sam remembered Arya, and he prayed she was still alive. Far across the frozen waters of the narrow sea, beyond the silence of Braavos and the shattered remnants of Pentos, a single figure walked in the snow. Arya Stark, alive but changed. Her face was scarred, her hands frostbitten. She didn't speak unless she had to, and she didn't kill unless it was clean. She had made it across the sea before the last ports froze, and now she was headed to Volantis, to the Red Temple, the home of fire. The Red Temple had not fallen. The Night King's reach, even in Ald, its horror, had not pierced the walls of the Flame's sanctuary. Inside, dozens of red priests whispered prayers, not for the living, but for the flame that was promised. They had waited generations for a sign, and then Arya walked through the doors, bloodied and frozen, and the flames burned brighter. "She is not Azor Ahai," one priest said. "She is no prince," said another. But the High Flamekeeper shook her head. "She is something older, something the Night King fears more than fire." And so began the ritual. They did not give her a sword, they gave her a name, burned into her skin, etched into her soul. The name had no letters, no sound, just presence. Arya didn't need to understand, she just felt it. And when she opened her eyes, again the fire no longer burned her. It obeyed her. Across the sea, the Night King turned. No one had spoken, no one had moved, but he knew. A flame had awakened, a light that was not meant to be seen. And for the first time since he took Westeros, he paused. The sea was frozen now. Arya Stark walked across it, no ship, no crew, just her. Her boots cracked the ice with each step. Her breath came out in calm, measured clouds. Behind her the wind howled, but she didn't feel it, not anymore. The flame she carried wasn't on her skin, it was in her bones. She was no longer just Arya of House Stark. She was something older, something nameless. The Red Priests had whispered of her as the flame between shadows, a soul neither dead nor alive. Not fire, not ice, but vengeance wrapped in flesh. It took her 5 days to cross from Essos back to Westeros, over white plains that used to be the sea. Nothing lived, no birds, no fish under the ice, only silence. And then came the screams. Near the edge of what used to be Blackwater Bay, Arya found her first death camp. Rows and rows of people, alive, shivering, chained, barely breathing. The Night King didn't kill them. He kept them as batteries, fuel for his magic. Every few hours, one would be taken, dragged away, never seen again. Arya didn't hesitate. The guards were whites, silent, dead, fast, but they didn't expect her. She didn't burn them. She didn't stab them. She looked at them, and they crumbled, ash. Not even dust remained. The prisoners stared at her like she was a ghost, a girl with long hair, eyes like smouldering coals, and a dagger that shimmered like starlight. "Run," she said. And they did, but she didn't. She turned north. Somewhere deep inside the ruins of King's Landing, the Night King stood in the old throne room, The Iron Throne was still there, frozen, sharp, useless. He never sat, he just stared at it. And then he looked up, because he felt it again, the flame. It was coming. In the shadows of the mountains, a resistance was waiting. Tyrion Lannister, Gendry Baratheon, Samwell Tarly, even Davos Seaworth. Few in number, fewer in hope. They huddled in the caves of Dragonstone, surviving off old wine and dried roots every day. They lit a fire, not for warmth, but to remember. Then came the knock. Not a knock, really, a presence. Arya stood at the mouth of the cave, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Tyrion stared. You were supposed to be dead.
Not dead, she said. Just delayed. Gendry stepped forward. Is it true, what they say, that you carry it? She pulled back her sleeve. The burn mark on her arm glowed, the shape of a flame, and a face inside it. The Night King's face. Sam trembled. You can kill him. No, Arya said, but I can reach him.
The plan wasn't a plan, it was a death wish. But they followed her anyway, because the world had ended and she was the only thing still burning. They travelled by night, though the sun had long stopped rising. The skies above Westeros were always grey now, smothered by snow clouds and ancient silence. Even light had started to fade, not disappear, but dim. Like the world was tired of shining, Arya walked at the front. Tyrion, wrapped in a tattered cloak, limped behind her. Gendry carried the last real weapon left, a hammer forged in dragon, glass and Valyrian steel. Sam carried no blade, only a journal of notes and symbols, half-mad scribbles from dreams and prayers. They were joined by no armies, no banners, just a few starving villagers, a handful of children, one crippled knight, and a fire that refused to die. King's Landing was a ruin of silence. The snow had buried the streets. Ice climbed every tower like vines. Statues wept icicles, and the Red Keep, once a place of power, now stood like a haunted shell. Arya entered alone. She didn't ask for backup. She didn't want it. Inside, the temperature dropped. Even her breath disappeared. The Night King waited in the throne room. Still. Eternal. He watched her approach, not with eyes, but with awareness. As if he'd always known this moment would. Come, no army, no battle cries, just a girl with scars, and a soul on fire. I came to end it, she said. He tilted his head slightly, not mockery, not fear, just curiosity. Then he moved, and the room shattered. The columns collapsed. Ice burst from the ground. The whites came first, thousands pouring in from hidden tunnels, from walls, from the very floor. Arya danced. Her blade was light, her steps silent. She moved not as a fighter, but as a memory of one. Every cut left behind fire, not flame, but truth. And the dead could not stand in truth. They fell, screaming, then silence, and then it was just them. Outside, Tyrion and the others watched the sky change. It pulsed, red, then blue, then white, then still. Inside, Arya stood over the broken floor, blood trickling down her face, chest rising and falling with pain and rage. The Night King didn't bleed, but he burned. She had touched him, not with steel, but with soul. The moment her hand brushed his chest, something ancient screamed inside him. Not pain, but memory of being human. He froze, and for the first time he looked, afraid. Then he lifted his hand one final time, to raise her. But she smiled because behind him the trees had returned. He shouldn't have paused. The Night King had never feared, never hesitated until now. And in that pause, something ancient woke up. The walls of the Red Keep began to shake, not from battle, not from Arya, but from the roots beneath. Weirwood roots, thick, twisted, pale as bone, they cracked through the stone like fists through paper, pulsing with red sap. And through.
Then he came, Bran Stark, or what remained of him. He didn't walk.
He didn't speak. He just appeared, cradled by the roots. His eyes rolled white, but he wasn't the boy they remembered. He wasn't even the three-eyed raven anymore. He was the memory of the world itself. Every tree, every raven, every whisper of wind,